Welcome to the BXG Podcast, the podcast where pop culture and nerd culture meet.
You think it's just going to be barbecue sauce?
Because if you actually read those books, it's just gobbledygook.
I really think clothes should be mandatory.
Speaking of Star Wars,
Captain America.
trailer reaction video. Andor. Episode 5, the Axe forgets being a team player does not come naturally to Cassian. It's weird that like that's his name, like Cassian
Right.
Andor, but Andor. Does not come naturally to Cassian, but the daring mission to infiltrate an Imperial garrison requires it of him. It's weird the way that was written. The operation has been in the planning stages for months, or what feels like months after this episode. As the newest member of the mission, Cassian must overcome the prudent distrust of his teammates, particularly one very hypersensitive Chicagoite who his day job is in a greasy spoon. Yeah. Skeen. His character's name, and he at one point does kind of sneak up behind him and take his kyber crystal, and that's when Andor has to divulge he's being paid for this.
Yeah.
And we kind of see that Luthen's character is having a lot of doubts and might be having buyer's remorse when it comes to Andor. But what did you think of this episode?
I like to find it felt like it was a build-up episode. It felt like we had a really solid last episode, and this was we need to build things up. Still really well acted. Still looked very cool. But yeah, it was just a build-up episode. And it's not like those are bad episodes because you do need that. You do need those episodes to help you bridge the gap. And we're not halfway through or about halfway through at this point, right? I believe.
Let me peek that.
But either way, it's just one of those things where like you need to bridge the gap from one kind of event to the other, and you can't have every episode be like major event, major event, major event. And so I thought this was just a really, for being a build-up episode, in a lot of the different shows that we've watched, this is definitely one of the better ones where like it felt like things were still at play and things still mattered, even though it was mostly just like saying, this is what we need to do next. This is what's happening next. Not really any action, but also just good. It honestly felt like that, middle 15, 20 minutes of a movie, and they just stretched it out to a 30-minute episode of television, or it's like 35, I think. It was just that little thing where like, we're just building a little bit of tension. And I thought the building of tension was really good. I do really like Skeen. I think like he's a really great addition to something like this, where he is kind of like, there's something, maybe it's just from watching The Bear. That's exactly what it's like, skeeny, and it's just like weird how that works. And so I really like that. And I think it really showed off Diego Luna's like acting chops too, because you really do kind of like understand more about him in this episode, where he's talking about it's cool. I think the thing that just, works really well for this show, and we've mentioned this before, is how he just doesn't really have an allegiance. And right. It just, it's very, the two best shows that have come after, the two best things that have happened after in so many years in Star Wars, you can even say the last three movies, like those included, is The Mandalorian and Andor. And those are both people who are on the line. They play no allegiance to anything. They're just like, right. I'm doing this because I need to do this because I just want to survive. And there's something cool about that, because I think it sounds weird, but it's like, it's almost more relatable, because it's hard to think of yourself as being like Darth Vader. And it's also hard to think of yourself as being Luke Skywalker. And to find some people in the middle, they're just like, hey, I just need to get by. Like, I just got to pay my, it literally looks at the thing as like, you know what? I just got to get rent in this week. Landlord's on me. And this is what Andor feels like. I honestly feel like Cassian's like, there's going to be like one thing he's like, tables due, man. Like, I got to do this job for that. And it feels like that. And we got that from Rogue One. We definitely had that kind of idea from that, because that whole movie's kind of that in between until you see Darth Vader just go crazy, and it's awesome. The best scene in Star Wars, and since the 80s.
Oh, my knee popped.
I mean, but yeah, I just thought this was a good build-up episode. It leaves you wanting more, but that's the point, because we have more episodes. So what did you think?
Yeah, 12 episodes, and I
okay,
think,
so we are at the middle. Okay.
Yeah, I think episode or season 2 has already been said that that's gonna happen, because it's he's credited on IMDb. I was just checking. I was just trying to see what else he's been in real quick, but he's credited for 24 episodes on
Nice.
IMDb of this show. So that may mean that the second season's already been purchased or whatever. Yeah, I mean, this was I would say, from a purely action standpoint, this was a fairly boring episode. But I do think, I don't know if boring is the right word, but it seems like the tension, it's like building tension. And we start to kind of see where the plan's going and these different things. And they explain the plan for stealing the payroll. Again, I think that that's hilarious, because every other time that someone's stealing something in Star Wars, it's like, we're stealing the Death Star plans, or we're stealing like barrier or entry codes to get down to the forest moon in Andor. We're stealing this or that, and it's just like, we're gonna steal the payroll. It's like they're Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid or something.
So great.
But it's building the tension, and I did like this episode from the standpoint of, we did get a little bit of Skeen's backstory and kind of see that they were, the hell was that? That we have like this sort of, we're not all together, but we're in this together because the Empire in some way or another has oppressed us.
Right.
And I think that's, and we were talking about it last week. I think that's something that we need. We need to see more of how the Empire has been bad, because we don't actually get that. And we talked about, I don't want to belay that point, because we talked about it so much last week, but we're just kind of told, like, hey, the Empire's bad. Trust us. They're up to no good. Just trust.
They're black and red.
Like, yeah,
that's literally it. It's black and red. And that's it.
Black, red, and white, and they're very whatever, little red cookbook in their presentation or whatever, but it's just kind of like, they're bad, believe us. And I do, like, I want more of that. I want more of, this is how the Empire has made people eat shit. And I do think that this show can kind of play into that a little bit, because it's set between the prequels and the original trilogy, and other than like Rebels and some of the different cartoons, which I'm just gonna say it. I know Clone Wars is great. I've heard it's great. I'm not gonna watch it.
Sure.
I don't have the bandwidth. And this is like, it's the Marvel. It's the Marvel problem, where it's like, okay, it's all those memes, like in 2055, someone from getting into the MCU for the first time, realizing they have to watch 178 series and 340 movies to get caught up. And it's like, well, I don't want that. So these cartoons that are beloved by all, Clone Wars, Rebels, I'm not going to watch season 2 of The Bad Batch. There's just too much Star Wars. Okay. Yeah. So let's keep it good. I'm going to watch the good stuff. I'm going to watch Andor. I'm going to watch The Mandalorian. I'm going to watch Ahsoka, because I think that's going to be good too. But I'm going to watch that stuff. And I'm not saying I'm not going to watch Clone Wars because it's for kids and it's a cartoon, because I love cartoons. We're going to start reviewing a cartoon next week. But I am good on that stuff. But this
Sure.
is so far, this and Rogue One, and I guess Solo are the only things that happen in that time period. And that's what I want to see more of, because I want to see just how the Empire has had their boot, everybody under the heel of their boot. And I think that getting into the backstory of each of the characters that's in this sort of motley crew would be one really cool way of exploring that. Unfortunately, what I think is probably going to happen is we got a little bit of Skeens, and obviously we know some of Cassian's backstory, but I don't know that they're going to explore that too much, because
Right. Yeah.
if they give us another, like next week, the week coming, it has to be the heist. You know what I mean?
It does.
It has to. So we'll see how that goes, but I hope that it goes in a direction where we can continue to explore the backstories of some of these characters that gives us a sense of just how like oppressive the Empire is. With that being said, what do you think of, I think one of the more like comical, but I don't necessarily think it's supposed to be comical, side stories is Mon Mothma, or Mon, yeah, and her like husband, who just is just like, whatever, bitch, I don't care.
I mean, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I understand why they're throwing something in to give us like a little B story, but I don't really care that much. Honestly, I just don't. I just like every time that kind of happens, I don't zone out because I'm still paying attention to the show. But yeah, it just doesn't really mean that much. And the way they kind of present it, I think they kind of know that too, but they're just trying to give us a little bit of B story.
Yeah, and it's a legacy character who isn't like a huge legacy character.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not like you're jamming Luke Skywalker down our throats. It's
something else.
Yeah. And I think it plays into like with when we see her versus I think later on in the series when we get Forrest Whitaker's Saw Gerrera, it gives us that different feel about how the rebellion sort of is fractured in many ways, and there's this political side to it, and then Saw Gerrera's character, from everything that I've seen of Clone Wars or whatever, he's way more militant and way more, I'm just going to do whatever I have to do to get the job done sort of thing. So it's interesting to see the juxtaposition of the different sides of the rebellion as it comes together. But that's kind of the interesting thing, is like, we know what Andor's fate is, but there's still plenty of time for them to tell interesting stories up until that point. So I think doing a second season or even beyond that makes sense.
Oh, sure. 100%. Like, this is a show I'm not at all concerned about at all. Like, I just think this show makes sense, does good storytelling, knows what it is.
Right. So next week we're hoping action-packed, heisty.
Yeah, next week will be action-packed. It'll be weird if it wouldn't be. Like
thing. So
yeah.
All right. Moving on.